In December, Dan called me and told me that Dad was receiving the Werner Fricker Award. And it's not lost on me at all the significance of this honor, because from my early days in soccer, he emphasized the history of the game and the legacies of those who have preceded us, all of us, in honoring and loving soccer. So when Dan asked me to sum up his career in 5 minutes, that was a little bit daunting. And then I just started thinking the same phrase over and over again. It went well. So the first thing I want to do is thank Sunil, Hank, Alan, Dan, the committee, and there's countless other people, and I obviously won't be able to mention everybody who's a part of this, but know that if I'm forgetting you, it's not intentional. My father's career through soccer started by being inspired by his mother. So it's apt that he was known for coaching women. She was a competitive swimmer at the YMCA in an era when women didn't particularly compete in sports. He discovered his work ethic, integrity, and mentality approach to life through his father. And in his early days as a professional player and before launching Soccer Plus, he worked in his father's radiator company in downtown Hartford. The challenge of being Anthony DiCicco is that people think I'm named after my father. I'm actually named after both my grandfathers. And like Dan said, my mother's here tonight, as well as her brother, Ed, who's named after his father. So I'm Anthony Edward DiCicco. I'm not the third. Being named Anthony DiCicco wasn't a problem in 1982. By 1994 or so, it had become a pretty big thing to overcome. He'd branched out and he'd become an icon in our group. And it really stemmed from him being a goalkeeper and his love and passion for goalkeeping from the outset. The mentality of being a goalkeeper, the leadership of being a goalkeeper, and I love a good story arc. So the fact that he's being honored with this tonight, the same night that Dr. Joe Macknick and Brian Scurry, both goalkeepers, are going into the Hall of Fame is not lost on me. And in fact, he's following Mary Harvey, his first goalkeeper from the 1991 Women's World Cup, in being honored with this award. And I want to talk to you just a bit about that. A year ago, March 24th, we were in San Jose for the qualifier and the Hall of Fame dinner. And he was there to induct Brandy and Shannon, he delivered Brandy's induction speech, but obviously Shannon was going in as well, and Harv was getting the Werner Fricker. This would turn out to be his last public appearance of his life. And, you know, in the days and months that followed, we found that to be incredibly apropos. I want to tell you a quick story about the end of his life. And in January of last year, after he was diagnosed, I flew to Connecticut and we were having a conversation about what this process looked like for him. And he didn't know. He had a lot of research to do and wanted to do his homework, but the one thing he said to me that day in January was, "We're not going to make any decisions from a place of fear." And that lesson will stay with me for the rest of my life, because to be able to navigate soccer with grace is impressive, and it's why he's being honored today. To navigate life with grace is a testament to his ability to extract the lessons from soccer and implement them on a daily basis. One of the things that came out of that conversation was the reality that he could die. And I remember having the conversation with some of my brothers about what we would want to ask him or what we didn't know that we would want to know. And the truth is, by living the life that he did and teaching us in the way that he did, sharing so much of himself, there wasn't much that we were inquisitive about. But my youngest brother, Nicholas, did have one question. He wanted to know if Dad was worried that the press would have crucified him if Brandy Chastain had missed the winning penalty for the World Cup by having her coach tell her to take it with her weaker foot. And he thought about it for about 2 seconds, and he said, "Nope." He said, "The thought never crossed my mind." He said, "What I thought about was who I wanted in the spotlight, in that moment. And then I knew that I wanted her to give a different look than she'd given China in the Algarve Cup earlier that year. And the rest is history. I want to talk for a quick second about the other two goalkeepers, Dr. Joe and Bry. Dr. Joe was for many, many years a competitor of my father's, Soccer Plus and Number One, the two biggest goalkeeper schools in the country. And last month in Philadelphia, we were doing the NSCA Foundation endowment, and Dan and Hank and Joe Cummings and Lisa Cole, all four of whom are here, gave wonderful speeches. But the moment that will stay with me, I was standing with a former Soccer Plus and Number One goalkeeper, Number One camp's director, Sky Eddie Bruce. And Sky was telling me the story about how in 1994, when she made the move from Number One to Soccer Plus, it was on Joe's recommendation. Because he said, Tony's the national team coach. If you want to be seen and you want a chance at the national team, I don't want to lose you, but you have to go work for him. And it resonated immediately. The parallels between their two careers are incredible. And Dr. Joe, congratulations, well-deserved, and happy to be here for this. Bry's a more complicated one. I don't know what story to tell about Bry, because Bry is one of the most incredible people you'll ever meet. The first woman into the first African-American woman into the Smithsonian as a part of the new African-American History Museum Title IX exhibit. But the story that kept coming back to me about Bry was, again, a camp story where she was working Soccer Plus. And she'll have to correct me after the dinner. I think it was 2 months after the World Cup in 1995. And I think she was working camp at the Ethel Walker School. And I remember her working with some terrible, terrible goalkeepers. And the patience and grace that she showed through that process is a much nicer story than if I tell you that every time she came into national team camp, she came in unfit, but had this ridiculous ability to just suddenly be fit in about 2 weeks, which is the story that he would have told. So congratulations, Bry. I know he would have he would have been very, very proud of you tonight. So before I let you go, I do want to talk just about a few of the lessons we've extracted from his life. The fact that he was a builder of environments, and not only that, but a student of leadership and top-level success stories from any sport, any walk of life. And when we talk about how he was able to achieve what he did in the way that he did, it comes down to a couple things. But the number one thing for leaders to understand is that you create the conditions for those around you to be successful. He never lost sight of the fact that it wasn't about him. He never lost sight of the fact that he was in a position that he was because of mentors like Bob Gansler and Anson Dorrance and Bobby Howe and Mooch Meyernick and Clive Charles. Those last two he would want me to be sure to mention tonight. And let's give both of them a round of applause, because there's such an important part of this story and all of our stories. The last thing I'll say is, with his death, we felt an explosion of emotion. I've been telling people all week, this is the last stop on the memorial tour. And it's not because I don't want people to remember his legacy, but I don't want us to get caught up in celebrating his death or memorializing his death. I want us to get back to pulling out the lessons of his life. And one of the things that resulted from all of these, just this explosion of emotion, is the question. Everybody asks the same question: how are you doing? A million times, how are you doing? And I appreciate it every single time. But I've also come to really internalize the answer to that question. We're okay. We are incredibly blessed. I'm standing here celebrating my father in as special a way as I possibly can, with people who mattered so much to him, both as colleagues and friends. But we're also not at all okay, not even a little bit. And we miss him every single day, every minute, being at the convention in Philadelphia, being at the NWSL semifinal in Portland, being at the Breakers game in July. The absence is absolutely felt. So what it comes down to is living with the contradictions that both these things are true. And I see that parallel in the country, in the planet, but also in our soccer community as well, which is thanks to Sunil and Dan and the board and so many people, we are in a tremendous, tremendous position in U.S. soccer today, and I'm so grateful for that. And we also have our challenges. The challenge is not to be afraid. The challenge is to see the failure of Trinidad and Tobago or whatever it may be, and to face that challenge with the confidence that you're going to fail forward. And that's what happened to him. There's a very good chance that this speech and this award never happened if after he loses the World Cup in 1995, Alan and Hank decide to go in a different direction. But their faith in him was rewarded in all of the celebrations that we've gotten to share together through 96, 99, 2008, and everything in between. So all I'm going to say is the same thing I said when we finished his memorial service. The aim is to light a fire with the love he left behind. He loved this game. He loved this organization. He loved all of you. And more than anything else, he loved you, Mom. And although you don't know as many people in this room, none of this story is possible without you. You're the secret weapon. So on behalf of all the people who played for him, he coached with, students at Soccer Plus, and I've been getting messages from people, because I asked where they are today, and they're in every walk of life, from medicine to law enforcement, from teachers to doctors. This is for all of you, and thank you very much for this honor.